I remember the first time she said my name, softly, like she was afraid of what it might mean if she said it again. It was late. The office had thinned out hours ago, the kind of silence that made every movement sound like a confession. The lights hummed low, throwing gold across the glass table where she stood, the boss's wife. Graceful, deliberate, always collected. The kind of woman who made the air behave differently when she walked in. I wasn't supposed to be there that long. I was only supposed to drop off the quarterly reports. But she'd been waiting, or maybe just still there, pretending to be busy, one hand resting against her neck like she was holding something she couldn't let fall. "You work late," she said, not looking up right away. "You too," I managed, trying not to sound too aware of her voice. She smiled at that, not the polite kind she gave everyone else, but one that seemed to recognize the tension between us, quiet and mutual, sitting there like a shared secret neither of us had agreed to yet. Her perfume lingered in the air, not overpowering, but warm, like something familiar you can't quite name. Vanilla, maybe? Or memory? I handed her the file. She didn't take it right away. Her fingers hovered close to mine, and for a second I thought she might, but she just said, "You always double-check your work, don't you?" I nodded. "Habit." She tilted her head slightly, eyes scanning me like she was trying to understand something that wasn't written on the paper between us. "That's rare. Most people just finish things to get them over with." There was a pause, the kind that stretches too long and says too much. I could feel the warmth from the desk lamp brush against my arm, and when she finally took the file, her fingertips grazed my skin. It was nothing. Just contact. But somehow it felt deliberate, like she meant for me to notice. She sat down then, crossing one leg over the other, and the sound of her heels against the marble floor echoed softly. "You remind me of someone," she said, almost to herself. "Someone I used to know a long time ago." I wanted to ask who. I didn't. Instead, I just watched the way her gaze drifted to the window, the city lights spilling against the glass, her reflection half lit, half shadow. "You shouldn't say things like that," I said quietly, before I realized I had. Her lips curved, faintly amused. "Why not?" "Because people might misunderstand." She looked back at me then, directly, unflinching. "And do you misunderstand?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. My pulse was louder than the clock behind her. For a moment, it felt like the whole world had narrowed to that small room, the hum of the lamp, the faint scent of rain from the open window, the rhythm of her breathing just a few feet away. She stood finally, walking past me, the brush of her sleeve catching mine. I thought that was it. The moment would dissolve, like so many almost do. But then she stopped at the door. Her hand on the frame, her voice lower now. "You should go home," she said, "before someone starts asking questions." I almost laughed. "About what?" She turned slightly, her eyes catching mine, soft, steady, and unbearably knowing. "About why you're still here." And before I could think of a single thing to say, there was a knock on the outer door, firm, unexpected, and her expression shifted, just for a second. That look, part fear, part something else, stayed with me long after I left. Just like her whisper would later. "Your touch stays long after you leave." The next few days, I tried not to notice her. Tried being the key word. Every time I passed her office door, slightly ajar, light spilling into the hallway, I caught myself slowing down. I told myself it was just habit, that I wasn't waiting for her to look up. But she always did. Every time. And every time, it felt like a question neither of us wanted to ask out loud. She wasn't my boss, not technically. But she belonged to him, the man whose name was on every contract, every paycheck. The man who'd built this company, and who trusted me far too much. That's what made it dangerous. Not just the age gap. Not just the whispers that would follow. It was that she was untouchable, and she knew it. One evening, I found her alone in the break room, the city reflected in the dark window behind her. She had her hair tied up, a loose strand falling against her neck. She was staring into a mug of untouched coffee, as if trying to find something at the bottom. You shouldn't work so late, I said, half smiling as I walked in. Neither should you, she replied, though her voice sounded softer this time, tired, but kind. You'll end up like him. Married to the job. There was something in the way she said it, him, that carried a quiet ache. I'd seen her smile at parties, laugh in the right moments, lean into the role of the perfect wife. But here, in the dim light of a half-empty floor, she looked different. Not perfect. Just human. Is that such a bad thing? I asked. She exhaled, a faint, rueful laugh slipping out. Depends on what the job takes from you. I didn't know what to say. The hum of the vending machine filled the silence between us. She rubbed her thumb along the edge of her mug, absent-minded, lost in thought. Then she looked up, right at me. You remind me of who I used to be, she said quietly, before I started worrying about what people might think. Her honesty caught me off guard. There was no flirtation in her tone, no performance. Just truth. And something about that truth drew me closer than any smile ever could. When I stepped forward to hand her a file she'd left behind earlier, our fingers touched. Not accidentally this time, not quite. She didn't pull away immediately. Her skin was warm, her pulse steady but fast enough that I could feel it. We both froze. The air between us changed, heavy, aware. She broke the silence first. You shouldn't look at me like that, she whispered. How am I looking at you? I asked. Her lips parted, but she didn't answer. Instead, she brushed past me, a deliberate, delicate escape, but not before her hand grazed my shoulder, slow enough that it felt intentional. And when she reached the doorway, she hesitated. Good night, she said softly, without turning. It wasn't a goodbye. It was something that sounded too much like come back tomorrow. It started raining the next evening. The kind that made the windows hum and the streetlights blur. Everyone had left early, everyone except us. I was in her office, helping sort through invoices she offered to look over for her husband. She didn't need my help, and I think we both knew that. But neither of us mentioned it. She sat beside me at the small table near the window, her hair loose for once. The air smelled faintly of paper rain, and whatever perfume she wore, subtle, lingering, impossible to ignore. Our conversation was quiet, broken by pauses that lasted too long. Did you always plan to work here? She asked suddenly. I smiled. No. I just sort of ended up here. Wrong place, right person. Her eyebrow lifted slightly. Which one am I supposed to be? Depends on the day, I said, and immediately regretted how honest it sounded. Her gaze lingered, soft and unreadable. She reached across to adjust the papers in front of me, her hand brushing mine. The touch was light, but it set off something neither of us could contain. I could hear the rain tapping against the glass, steady, insistent, as if it was counting the seconds we didn't move away. She exhaled quietly, the sound closer than it should have been. You should be careful, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. With what? With how you look at me. I swallowed hard, unable to find anything clever to say. The truth was, I wasn't looking at her, not really. I was memorizing her. The curve of her jaw, the faint shadow beneath her eyes, the way her fingers tightened around her pen like she was holding back words she couldn't say. She noticed. I could tell. For a moment, she leaned in, not much, just enough that I could feel her breath, warm against my cheek. My pulse stuttered. Then a knock on the office door. We both froze. Her assistant's voice broke through, muffled but too close. Mrs. Hale? Your husband just called. He's on his way up. Her eyes widened, the spell shattering. She stood too quickly, nearly knocking over the chair. Thank you, Claire, she said, steadying her tone. Tell him I'll meet him downstairs. Footsteps retreated. Silence fell again, but a different kind this time. She turned to me, still catching her breath. You should go. I can stay, I said without thinking. Her voice softened. That's exactly the problem. We stood there, either moving, the air between us charged with everything we hadn't said. And then, as she passed me on her way out, she stopped, close enough that her shoulder brushed my chest. For a heartbeat, we didn't breathe. Her hand lifted, hesitated midair, then rested against my sleeve, a quiet, trembling touch that lasted a second too long. "I don't know what we're doing," she whispered. "Neither do I." But neither of us stepped back. The next time I saw her, she wasn't pretending anymore. The company dinner had ended hours ago, but she'd stayed behind, still in the same dark dress, heels in one hand, exhaustion and something raw flickering beneath the surface. The ballroom was empty now, half-lit, music long gone. Only the faint hum of the city filtered through the glass walls. "You shouldn't still be here," I said, stepping closer. She looked up from the table where she'd been sitting, her reflection caught in the window, elegant, lonely, beautiful in a way that hurt to look at. "Neither should you," she murmured, repeating my own words from before. I smiled, but it didn't last. There was too much in the air, too many things we'd both been holding back. Her voice trembled slightly when she spoke again. "He doesn't even notice when I leave anymore." I said nothing. What was there to say? I could see the tremor in her hands, the faint lines near her eyes that deepened when she tried to hide emotion. She was unraveling quietly, and somehow, I was the one she was unraveling in front of. "Maybe he trusts you," I said softly. She gave a small, bitter laugh. "No. He's just stopped caring." A silence settled, sharp, heavy. She turned toward me then, and there was something in her eyes I hadn't seen before. Not curiosity. Not restraint. Something closer to wanting. "You make it harder to forget what I'm missing," she said. I froze. "You don't mean that." "Don't I?" Her tone wasn't teasing anymore. It was a confession, quiet, dangerous, real. I took a step forward before I could stop myself. She didn't move. Her breath hitched slightly as I reached up, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. My fingers trembled, from nerves, from guilt, from the weight of every unsaid word between us. Her eyes closed. Just for a moment. "Don't," she whispered, though she didn't pull away. "I can't keep pretending this isn't there," I said, my voice low, closer to her ear than it should have been. "Every time I walk away, I think about you. Every single time." Her hand lifted, almost on instinct, resting against my chest. "You don't know what you're asking for," she whispered. "Maybe I do." Her pulse raced beneath her touch. She leaned in, barely, until her forehead rested against mine. The scent of her perfume, faint and familiar, filled the small space between us. I could feel her breathing, uneven, shallow. "If I let this happen," she started, but couldn't finish. "Then it happens," I said quietly. We stood there, suspended between choice and consequence, the world narrowing to her hand on my chest and the inches that still separated us. Her lips parted. My breath caught. And then, a phone buzzed sharply on the table beside us. She stepped back, startled, her expression flickering between relief and heartbreak. His name glowed on the screen. She turned away, voice breaking. "You should go." I didn't move. "Say you don't want this," I said, almost pleading. Her answer came like a whisper she didn't mean for me to hear. "I can't." The next morning, everything looked normal, but nothing felt that way. I told myself what happened last night was just a moment. A charged, impossible moment. But when she walked into the office, wearing that same calm expression, pretending like nothing had happened, I realized she was better at hiding than I was. Our eyes met for a second too long across the hallway. That was all it took, the memory of her breath near mine, her voice trembling when she said "I can't." Then she looked away first. By noon, the illusion of routine had already begun to crack. Her husband, the boss, called me into his office for a brief meeting. Nothing unusual. Except this time, he mentioned her. "She told me you've been helping out a lot lately," he said casually. "She trusts your judgment." I tried to nod like it meant nothing, but something about the way he said it made my throat tighten. When I left his office, she was waiting by the elevator, arms crossed, expression unreadable. "What did he say?" she asked quietly. "Nothing. Just about work." She nodded, her voice a whisper. "Good." But her hand was trembling slightly, her composure fragile at the edges. We stepped into the elevator together, just the two of us. The mirrored walls caught everything we were trying not to show, her eyes flicking toward me, my hands clenched to keep from reaching out. When the doors closed, she finally spoke. "He saw your jacket in my office last night." The air went still. I swallowed hard. "You told him?" Her eyes darted to the floor. "I told him you dropped it off after hours. That's all." I exhaled, trying to steady my pulse. "He believed you?" "I don't know," she said softly. "He's been watching me more lately. Asking where I go, who I talk to." For a moment she looked small, not the composed woman everyone else saw, but someone tired of holding everything together. "I never meant for you to get dragged into this," she whispered. "Too late," I said before I could stop myself. "I'm already in it." Her eyes met mine then, wide, conflicted, and suddenly glassy with something like fear. Or maybe longing. The elevator stopped at her floor. She didn't move. When the doors opened, she reached out, not to push me away, but to touch my hand. The contact was brief, trembling, like she was reminding herself that I was real. I told myself I could keep this controlled. She said, voice breaking slightly. "But you make it impossible." Her words hit me harder than I expected. "Then stop fighting it," I said quietly. She hesitated, eyes searching mine for something steady to hold onto. Then she stepped out, leaving me standing there as the doors slid shut between us. Through the narrowing gap, her final words reached me, barely a whisper, but sharp enough to cut through everything else. "He knows more than he's saying." The elevator closed. And I realized, what we'd started wasn't just dangerous anymore. It was about to cost us both something we couldn't undo. It was late again. Of course it was. Her office light was still on long after everyone else had gone. The rain had returned, steady and familiar, drumming softly against the windows like it had the night everything started. I stood outside her door for too long before knocking. She looked up as I stepped in, eyes red-rimmed from something she wouldn't name, lips parted as if she'd been waiting for the sound of my footsteps. "I thought you went home," she said. "I couldn't," I replied. "Not yet." She set her pen down, exhaling like the weight she'd been carrying had finally found a name. "You shouldn't be here, not tonight." "Then tell me to go," I said quietly. She didn't. Instead, she rose from her chair and crossed the small space between us, her movements slow but sure, as though every step was a battle she'd already lost. When she stopped, we were close enough that I could feel the warmth of her breath, quick, uneven. "He asked me about you again," she murmured. "Said he's noticed changes." My jaw tightened. "And what did you say?" "That I didn't know what he meant." Our eyes met, two liars standing in a room full of truths. Her hands trembled slightly as she brushed a strand of hair from her face. "I keep trying to make this stop before it ruins everything." "And does it?" I asked. She hesitated, voice barely audible. "It already has." The silence that followed was alive, pulsing, electric, unbearable. I took a half-step closer, close enough that my sleeve brushed hers. The air between us thickened, full of things we'd never dared to say. "Tell me what you want me to do," I said. Her eyes flickered, searching mine. "I want you to forget me." I shook my head slowly. "You don't." Her lips trembled, not from fear, but from restraint. "You think this is something beautiful," she whispered. "It isn't. It's fire. And it burns everything it touches. Maybe that's the only way to feel alive," I said, my voice rough, closer than it should have been. For a heartbeat, she didn't move. Then her hand lifted, hesitated, and pressed gently against my chest. I could feel her pulse through her palm, fast, desperate. "You make it so hard to do the right thing," she whispered. Then stop trying, I said. The distance between us disappeared. For a second, one fragile, infinite second, we hovered there, breath against breath, the world outside dissolving into rain and silence. Her eyes closed. I thought she'd finally let it happen. But then she pulled back, not far, just enough to leave a cold space where warmth had almost been. Tears shimmered at the corners of her eyes. I can't lose who I am, she said softly. I nodded, because I finally understood. We stood there, still too close, still unable to look away. No one won, no one surrendered, but something deeper passed between us, recognition. We were both already changed,